like I've done all these amazing things, right? I've like traveled the entire world. I went to the Olympics. I've done just literally, like, I had this dream as a child and I got to live the entire dream of what I wanted to do and be. And I would trade every bit of it in a blink of an eye to just be normal and like have my brother.
Hey, welcome back to another episode of The Day After. On today's episode, we sit down with John, who opens up about losing his younger brother just months before he entered the Olympics, and how that affected his performance and his desire to be at the Olympics. We're grateful to John for being so honest, raw, and real about the experience, and we hope that you enjoy the episode. And while I have you, go ahead and rate and review the show wherever you listen to podcasts. It really does go a long way to help supporting the show and supporting our guests who come on. Speaking of which, if you or you know somebody who would be a good guest for the show, go ahead and reach out to us. We'd love to share their story. So go ahead, grab your warm milk and honey, sit back, relax, and enjoy the show.
In October of 2017, I got a call from my father that my 17-year-old brother was found dead in his bed by my mom. I'm an Olympic athlete. My brother is an Olympic athlete, an Olympic champion, and our brother Michael was also on that, trajectory, that path. So
He was younger?
Younger, yeah. He was 17 years old. And, super athletic, super healthy, no drugs, no alcohol, just sudden cardiac arrhythmia. And, he didn't even roll over. Like my mom said, he was still laying on his side with his hand under his head, like just super, super quick. And, dealing with that since then has been difficult. It's kind of there's a lot that goes into it, right? But it's such a unique case because I feel like a lot of people, when they're dealing with loss, one thing that they are almost gifted with is whatever causes that death or that loss. A lot of people are given, some sort of closure, whether it be cancer and, time to say goodbye, or a heart attack. And you're like, oh, well, maybe that person wasn't healthy, or if, whether it be people that succumb to addiction or, die in a car accident or an accident really of any kind. I always felt that, the difference between my story and a lot of the other people that I would talk to that had dealt with loss was the fact that in our case, we were given such little closure. And it was such a freak case that there was such a long time period where we really didn't even have, a result of an autopsy that could even give us a result of like what had happened.
And that's where you feel like there isn't closure.
There is now in a, to a certain sense. It's, Time heals everything. But like I said, it was such a unique case in the way that it happened and the time that it happened. I would say that it definitely, I think everybody's loss rocks their world, but not being able to blame something was probably the hardest thing for me.
Yeah. Well, and also it didn't make any sense. Like you, like, I know what you're saying about before, like, cancer, like it doesn't make sense why it chooses said person. But in this case, Mikey was, like you said, on the path to become an Olympic athlete. He was super fit, working out, all of these things. And suddenly a 17-year-old, otherwise perfectly healthy boy just doesn't wake up. You're like, what's the logic in this, right?
Yeah, and that causes a whole other world of emotions, right? Like in reality, my brother was training and not living at home. He was at home just visiting my parents for a week. They went out, they were watching a Yankee game with my grandmother the night before, just went to bed, super normal. And like being an athlete, we do tend to be early risers, and My mom thought it was weird that Mikey wasn't up at 10:30 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and the dogs were acting weird and this, that, and the other. But you know, there's always that. I think everybody who has loss deals with the different waves and phases and things that come along with it, whether it be anger or blame or self pity, or pity in general. And I think that for me, the biggest thing that I had to deal with for a long time was my anger. And I would say that even though I was 23 at the time, that might have been the first time in my life that I dealt with, life really not being fair.
Right.
Everybody's dealt with life not being fair at different points in their life. And, I've definitely had it happen since then. But whether it was like, not missing the Olympic, like, whether it was like missing the Olympics my first time, or, times where I was passed over for something that I thought I should have had, or anything like that, it all paled in comparison to the loss of my brother. So that's what I would say. Like, that was the first time really dealing with the fact that life isn't fair. And you kind of grow up through that, and you grow through that in the sense of like, I was dealing with anger, unparalleled.
Mm-hmm.
I hated everybody.
Yep.
Anybody who even like, I used to like to party a lot. But, I've never really been a drinker, since I turned 21, say, right? Like before then, everybody thinks it's cool. After it kind of lost its kick for me. But I mean, I found myself just like, I'd go out to the bar with my friends and I'd see drunk people, and I'm like asking myself why they're not dying. Or, like I'd see homeless people on the side of the street, and like, whereas prior to my, brother dying, or even now that I've dealt with my issues a little bit, you feel that pity, or like you want to help, or like, like you want to give them money or food or whatever. I wanted them to die.
Right.
Yeah.
I was like, because I wanted to know why the world was so unfair. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of people who, like, if they lose someone to like a drunk driver, right, because it's always the drunk driver who lives, right? Always.
Yeah.
Always the drunk driver who lives. And like, I think that those people deal with the anger in a lot of the same way. Like they want like that eye for an eye thing, even, and like, not even if it's related. I think that they see other people engaging in the same behavior that caused them their pain. And like, they want their retribution to that person, even though they might not even be the cause of their pain. So I would say that was the strongest emotion that I dealt with at first. I mean, other than the loss and the missing, and everybody deals with the inability to talk to that person again or call that person. Or
so, are you the middle?
I'm the oldest.
You're the oldest, and then it's Mikey is the middle.
Mike was the youngest.
He was the youngest, right. And then, so what's your middle brother's name? Chris. Okay, John, Chris, Mikey. So at the time, so you said you were like 23. Were you already headed towards the Olympics at that time? So like intense training, intense competition.
I was already world champion.
Okay.
Qualification for the Olympics. The first event was a month after Mikey had passed away.
Holy shit.
So even in that instance, when he passed away, my brother Chris and I were both on World Cup trying to go to the Olympics that year, 2018. And we were in Switzerland at the time.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, we were training and getting ready. And actually we had finished training that day. And I'm not a very religious, I'm not a religious person at all. Very, or otherwise 0% religious. But I do think that I do have some, spiritual tendencies. And, particularly that day, the day, my brother passed in the night of New York time, but that was the day for us. My brother Chris and we had a horrible day of training. I got super sick at training and was like vomiting and had to like pull out of training. And then my brother like had some super bad like brain fart, and I actually like ended up doing the wrong trick and like landed on his back like pretty bad. And we both like banged ourselves up, and we like both felt super off. We felt really off, like just something wasn't right. And at the time, obviously, we couldn't really like put our finger on what it was.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because it was weird. It was like, why? And then, and then it passed. And then like, at least I started to feel better, but it was like sick for no reason. And I kind of was like, oh, I was up on a glacier at the time period. So I was like, oh, maybe I'm just like elevation sick, weird, but then my brother was like off too. And everybody else seemed fine. And like, I say that because we were eating the same food and everything like that. And then I was talking to my dad after training, and he went to the dentist in the morning, and I actually like was talking to him on the phone when he pulled up to the house, and there was ambulances and police.
Oh no. So he didn't know.
And he didn't know, and he's like, something's going on, I got to call you back. And then he called me back 30 minutes later and obviously was like, hey, you should sit down.
Oh my God.
So what's the reaction that you and Chris have? I mean, you're,
my initial reaction,
10,000 miles away from your brother and your family.
I mean, my initial reaction was I like couldn't believe it for a second. I was like, it took me like 20 seconds to process. And then I like, I dropped the phone, and I was like sitting there for a second. And then my brother Chris was in the other room, and I held it together because I hadn't talked or like verbalized it yet. Right.
Yeah.
And then I walked into the other room and I told him what had happened. And as soon as it came out of my mouth and I saw his reaction,
yeah,
that's when I kind of lost it. And I mean, I don't remember too much detail because, it was kind of like a traumatic moment.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I do know that I smashed a lot of things, like a lot of things. I honestly, like to this day, I don't even know who paid to fix that Airbnb because I never saw a bill for it. But yeah, and then I had that moment. And then, I think, like my teammates ran into the room and they didn't know what was going on. They just saw me smashing everything. And then I obviously was like screaming what happened, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And then like all my coaches start running into the room. I mean, news travels fast, right? Like, especially in a scenario like that. And then everybody's running into the room and this, that, and the other thing. And I'm shaking. And I'm like trying to get a joint rolled in front of everybody. I'm like, I need to get high. Fuck all you guys. And yeah, I mean, I was definitely not in a good place. That's for sure.
Now, did you guys fly home after?
Yeah. So, I mean, we were up high, like in the glacier. So we had to get a flight out of Zurich. The next flight wasn't until 8:30 in the morning the next morning. So, I mean, we got on the first flight out of Zurich back to JFK and then up to Rochester. And we didn't sleep. I mean, obviously we didn't sleep much until we got to that flight. And there was definitely some substance consumption prior to that, getting home. But yeah, none of it's good, right? Like none of it's good. And I don't know. I mean, I don't think that there was like a healthier way to deal with it or a non-healthier way.
There is no way to deal with it. It's just whatever the fuck happens in the moment.
Yeah, and I do feel like in that moment, like, the honest truth that a lot of people don't want to tell you is that you're just along for the ride, man.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%.
And like someone's going to say something to you that is just going to get you.
Yeah.
Yep.
I remember, like, I still remember at my brother's funeral, like, I have a buddy, I mean, I'm not gonna say him, but, like, he caught my hand cocking back to punch the priest at my brother's funeral.
Yeah.
Like, because he said to me, he, like, walked up to me, and he's like, "Hey, man, I just wanna let you know that everything happens for a reason." And I'm like, "Bro, get out of here with that garbage."
That became like the big running joke with. So I have 3 kids, and that was like our running joke at the funeral because everybody just came up to him like, "It all happens for a reason.
Mhm.
Don't worry, she's in a better place." And I was like, "Great," because that brings us comfort. And there was an instance. So we did hospice at my house. My wife, she was in hospice for 5 days, and Ashley and her dad and everybody was here helping me because I couldn't function. And like you said, you go for a ride. I remember sitting on the couch. It was probably like day 2 of hospice, and I don't know what happened, but my body got up. I walked out the door and I just walked away. And I was like way down the road. Her dad just happened to be driving back to my house, and he was like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I have no idea." And he just started yelling at me. He's like, "Get the fuck back at the house. Your kids need you." And it was like it had to snap me out of it. Your body just reacts in ways that you can't even fathom.
No,
It just
no.
fucking happens.
You're just along for the ride, and I mean, that's just what it is, you know? And I was in a particularly shitty situation because all I wanted to do was, like, self-medicate, right?
Right.
Like, I'm not some saint who's not going to tell you that I didn't full well know that there were narcotics available that would make me feel better. But at the same time, the Olympics was 2 months away. Qualification for it was starting in a couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I definitely felt a responsibility to my brother to make sure that I was there.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, I knew
To
that
Mikey.
if he was, yeah, to Mikey, if he was around and he had known that that had caused, myself and my brother to not go, that definitely was the draw, because I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I know that I had trained my whole life and worked so, so, so incredibly hard to go to the Olympics, but I did not care.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, I just didn't care. Like, the only thing that I cared about at that point was making sure that, I didn't disrespect my brother's memory, because he was an athlete and he cared about it and he would have wanted to, be there to watch and be part of the whole ordeal, right? I wanted to be there to support my brother Chris, who was also trying to go to the Olympics. We were trying to go and do this thing together, and we had planned it out for the whole 10 years. And, it mattered. It mattered to us. It mattered to our family. It mattered to, thousands of people that had supported us over the years and, contributed to what we were doing. And I didn't want to let them down.
Mm.
But really, when it came down to it too, my parents, like, they needed something good to happen, right? Like, they
Right.
needed something good. And I knew that, like, losing Mikey and then me just, like, flying to Vegas, locking myself in a casino and self-medicating until I snapped out of it was, like, gonna not leave my mother in any kind of, like, good shape. So, I mean, I pushed on, and, like, I definitely was not doing the right thing all the time,
Mm-hmm.
but I made sure that I, did enough. I didn't looking back on my career now, and even after, like, my brother won the Olympics, right? Like, I, at that time period, did not go to the Olympics to win. Whereas, like, if Mikey was still around and alive, everything else, I would have done it different. To the point where, like, at the first qualifying event, my other brother Chris, um, he, he wasn't in a good headspace either. We were in the same place, and you know, whatever the reason may be, he ended up getting pretty badly hurt at the first
Oh shit.
qualifying event. He broke his femur, and did his ACL,
Damn.
MCL, PCO. He
Fuck.
exploded his leg into a lot of pieces. um, and so the Olympics was over for him really before it even like got started. And he was a great. I mean, he was ready to go, and I think he would have made the team if he was healthy. Based on his stats and everything that he had done up to that point, he probably would have made the team and gone with me. So at that point, I did the bare minimum. And when I say bare minimum, I don't mean bare minimum as far as work, more risk, right? Like we did a pretty dangerous sport that involves a lot of risk and a lot of injury, clearly by what my brother had just gone through. So I knew what I had to do to make the Olympic team, and it wasn't my best. And it sure as shit wasn't what made me world champion, but it was enough to go. And then once I knew that I had gotten enough World Cup points and everything to go, I definitely took my foot off the gas.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was capable of doing a bunch of different, quadruple twisting, triple backflips. And I needed to train those and get them ready. And if I had trained, I might have been able in a different situation to do, 5 twists or something that I needed to win. I would have been more ready. But once I had made the Olympic team, I just was like, I need to stay in shape enough to do this. And that's it. And I went to the entire Olympic training camp, and I didn't do one triple backflip. I did doubles every day because I could do doubles in my sleep. I'm 4 years, 3 years retired. I could go do them right now. And I knew that there was very little to zero risk of injury training that way. And all I cared about was walking into the opening ceremony, being part of it. And then, really taking that first jump in the Olympics, as a member of Team USA, like getting everybody who had like put in everything towards getting us there, like getting them to see that. And then after that, I didn't really care.
Mm-hmm. So the qualifications, that was a couple months, you said?
It was like a 2-month period. Yeah.
So you talked a little bit about how you were motivated to do that for your, for Mikey's, in honor of Mikey, for your family.
Really, for my parents. It was
right for your parents. Do you feel like that added more pressure to you? Like, I can only imagine that it's already a high pressure situation.
100%. But the way I relieved the pressure was not trying. Like not trying in the sense of, hard work, but not taking the risks, not pushing myself, not.
Were you worried about getting hurt? Or like where you just mentally couldn't be there, but you were
super worried about getting hurt. I mean, for the first couple of months, because we didn't know what caused anything, I was scared to go. I was scared to go to sleep, and
right.
and I'm traveling with Chris, and I'm like shaking him in the middle of the night, all night, every night, making sure he's still fucking breathing.
Yeah. Yeah, because the autopsy period took a lot of many months, didn't it? Yeah.
And so I mean, there was just not a lot of sleep, not a lot of food, not a lot of taking care of myself that led up to my Olympic experience. And I mean, I still was in a good, I was jumping well, and I had put in the work prior to Mikey dying to have a very good Olympic performance, right? So like, the skills were there, and even after the first round, I was in first. So going into finals, I was in first. I put a really solid jump down, one of my easier tricks in the first round of finals. Solid second jump, and then, to be honest with you, I ran out of gas. It wasn't really the skills being there; it was the fact my endurance was gone.
Yeah.
I had not been taking care of myself, so to make it through the Olympics was essentially twice as long as any World Cup and twice as many jumps. And I just didn't have the focus and stamina to make it all the way through. And plus, a lot of people they realize that the Olympics is a very, media heavy event, but I mean, I was in the Olympic Village for 2 weeks prior to competing, or maybe a week and a half, and the amount of like I was just emotionally drained from dealing with like the media and answering questions about Mikey and my parents and how he died and
Oh,
this and that.
Yeah, it's so much.
jeez.
I was just fucking like I and it's painful that like to know that like that experience that I had worked my whole life for, like I couldn't wait for it to be over.
Yeah.
Right.
Like I could not wait.
And when I put myself in your shoes, because my reaction too is anger. It's something I'm still like trying to work through. And if I'm thinking of myself, okay, I'm at this place that I worked my whole life for. My brother just died 2 months. Like your mind is still completely fucking cloudy and just fucked from grief. And now you have people who, you know, I don't want to judge people and their intentions, but the media, they don't necessarily give a shit. They just want to hear the story.
100%.
Like, is that when your anger starts to rise, or did you immediately like have that anger?
I mean, I'm a 5'6" Irish guy. I didn't need my brother. I didn't need to be angry, bro. Like I was angry before.
Enough said.
Yeah, I'm a spicy little guy.
Like, is it Conor McGregor? That's the the Irish.
I'm a spicy. No, I mean there was definitely. I mean, I'm retired from sport now, so I'm pretty open with my life. But I mean, I made sure that my friend had, plenty of THC waiting for me when I was touched down in Rochester, to deal with this whole, you know, ordeal. And I got pretty baked on the way to my family's house. And just because I knew that there was like 100 people there,
Yeah.
I didn't want to see any of them except for my mom and dad. And I pulled up to our house and there was 3 TV stations in the drive.
Are
Oh
you
my-
fucking serious?
You're
Yeah.
like, I've just finished dealing with
And
this.
I'm like, God, you are so lucky that I'm just baked right now. Or else I would do something about this, but like I don't care. I'm going inside.
This was after the Olympics, or when you first went
No,
there?
this was 24 hours after he died.
Fuck. What the fuck are they doing in the house?
They want to know what's up.
That's crazy.
Story.
Yeah, was it because it was your brother, like, and you're and Chris's
Yeah,
brother?
it was Chris, my brother, and we were going towards the Olympics, and he was too, and
There had been a lot of coverage about you guys
there had
already.
been a lot. Yeah, there had been a lot of coverage already about that whole story. So, but that's the hard part, right? Like that's
So then you skied so this was 2018, and you said you've been out 3 years, so you skied for another 2 years.
mm-hmm.
When did you start to decide that you're done with it?
Oh, that was like, I knew that the passion had definitely dampened after Mikey died. That was like abundantly clear to me. And then every sport comes in generations, right? And I stuck around to try to go to the Olympics with Chris because he missed out on, essentially like my prime Olympics.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
But you can't do the sport that we did for somebody else. It's pretty dangerous. And like that's when fear and all the other stuff starts to creep in. And then I think that also the death of my brother started to make me realize my mortality a little bit. And like I would say that there was a fear aspect to what I was doing that wasn't present before, that started to make itself present in my mind.
Mhm.
What would happen if I got seriously injured, right? Like,
Yeah.
Right.
And it's not even that I was scared, because I mean, like Ashley's known me for quite a long time. I like a good adrenaline rush. But with that being said, with age comes that realization that and I wasn't, and I mean, the style of jumping that I took through my career was like fearless, and I pushed a couple of my limits here and there, and it led to me taking some hits here and there, and like I just got to the point where my body was sore and tired and breaking down on me, and on top of that, there was a million other things going on with the U.S. ski team that I didn't approve of, and coaches leaving, and my friends moving on and starting their second act, right? Like I said, generation was done, and the people my age were ready to move on and go do other things.
So when you decide to retire from skiing and you now have had 3 years of that, was there any point in these past 3 years where maybe you're like, that distraction of skiing is gone, where that grief, that anger, that just sensation of losing your brother became extremely present in your life, that you're like, okay, there's stuff coming up now that I need to sit with and deal with?
That stuff came as soon as the Olympics was over.
Okay.
And I realized very quickly that it was because I had masked all the emotion in order to get through that 3 months. Like I didn't deal with any of it.
Yeah.
I didn't deal with any of it. But I would say that that's a part of the healing process that I've been relatively bad at, because I still deal with it every day. And there's different parts of it that that I struggle with more than others. Different things have made me more angry over time. Like there are times when I have a very hard time remembering my brother's voice, and that bothers
Yeah.
Yes. That's what I'm going through right now. I'm like forgetting my wife's voice and I have to go to a video and it's still not the same.
me. Yeah, and then you have to go watch the video, and then that makes you sad,
Yeah.
and like it takes a lot to like be honest with someone and be like, that's probably not going to go
Right. Correct.
like
It won't.
it's just not.
No.
And everyone's like, oh, like it gets better over time, and it's like, not really. Like I don't think it does. I think that your coping gets better over time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's like drug use, right? Like over time, your tolerance to how shitty it is does increase, but it doesn't get fixed. It's not replaceable.
And then there's all these firsts. That's always the big thing for me, is like there's just all these firsts or all these moments that like
I hate all holidays now, and
Yeah, me too.
I don't want to go back to Rochester anymore because everything is attached to memories that I don't want to see anymore.
What are things that you have done to address the pain?
You like go to therapy? No, I mean, I'm that's where like I would say like do as I say, not as I do, type of thing. Like, definitely go get therapy, to go talk to somebody about it, because I did not, and it wasn't the healthiest way of going about.
Do you have any moments or rituals or ways to connect back to Mike? I know you said you weren't a spiritual person, but is there anything that you've developed over the years?
I think about him so often that I don't really feel the need to do any of that stuff. Myself and my brother, we have things that we do, on his birthday that he enjoyed doing, that we would do, or movies that we'll watch around certain times, or, certain things like that, you know, it's tough though, because it just doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't help, and it doesn't make anything any better. It just is what it is, right? Like,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and it's hard to realize that that's just a part of life, and like everyone has an expiration date, and unfortunately you just don't get to know when it is.
Right.
How
is your anger now?
I'm in a good mood currently. I see, I get jealous, there's some
Yes.
there I get jealous.
Yeah.
I get jealous of things that I can't do and that I don't have anymore. I get jealous of, as much as it's weird to say, like I get jealous of people that I'm like, and I don't know if you guys ever catch yourself thinking this way, and it's hard, right? Because Ashley, you babysat for me growing up, and I know your background, right? And it's very, and for myself, I mean, I've lived an extremely charmed life, right? Like when I really dive into it, it's like, fuck, am I ever lucky, right? But it's hard because you're like, I am not,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And like I've done all these amazing things, right? I've like traveled the entire world. I went to the Olympics. I've done just literally like I had this dream as a child and I got to live the entire dream of what I wanted to do and be. And I would trade every bit of it in a blink of an eye to just be normal and like have my brother,
Of
right?
course.
So
Yeah.
it's hard it's hard to find like that gratitude and be like, wow,
Mm.
I should be grateful for everything I do have while you're still like feeling this huge empty hole of something that you don't have that you did and that you can't replace, right? Like,
Yeah, I've had a lot of tragedy in my life. I've had a really shitty childhood, but I've also been very fortunate in my life. And man, when you talk about like trying to feel that gratitude, but also holding on to this pain, it is really fucking hard. And I wonder, I know there's been a big perspective shift for me. The situations are different. My wife was diagnosed with cancer, actually exactly how my aunt, Ashley's mom was. So I had years and years of like trying to work through this, but I've definitely had a perspective shift in life. And I wonder, like, have you, and what has been that perspective shift? Like, I know you mentioned a little bit where that mortality came in, but like you're 3 years out from being retired, you're, I'm assuming 30s. Like, what is that perspective shift? How is that now impacting your life going forward?
I mean, I would say that there is a little bit of like shit happens,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
Like little things bother me less because I'm like, whatever,
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's not so bad, or like, oh, that's going to be fine. That's nothing to get worked up over. But it also comes with the, late night anxiety and, you know, it's not all sunshine and daisies.
Yeah.
Correct.
Like I would say, even in my, like from my personal life to my dating life, I feel the effects of it, right? Like I get nervous if my brother is not responding still. I get nervous if it's late at night and, if I'm seeing someone or something like that, if they're not coming home, and like, I don't even know why.
Mm.
like,
Right.
I'm like, and like, I need to, like, like it's a balancing act because you're like, oh yeah, shit happens. And you're like, well, not all the time. And then, but for some people, it is all the time. Like for myself, and I do know other people, like some people, it's like you look at them and you're like, wow, the hits just keep fucking coming for this
Right.
person.
Yeah.
Like, how are they holding it together?
I definitely resonate with the anxiety. Every time my wife would always get the call after her scan, and it was always bad news. So I can't hear phone rings without having a panic attack. I mean, literally every day there's triggers in my life, and I feel, and the thing that I'm like working through right now with a therapist is this disconnect from my body. Because to me, I was like, oh, so everybody in my life, they've had their bodies attack them and kill them, or something bad happened to them. So my body's just trying to kill me. So I'm like, I must have cancer, or I must have this, or I must have that. And it's this constant like trying to reassure myself, where I just walk through life feeling like, yeah, I'm probably going to die young because that's what everybody's doing.
Yeah, I definitely worry about dying young. I mean, that's for sure. I worry about that all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, same here.
Which, if it happens, it happens. I did it all. So that was something that I learned when my brother passed away. It's like he died at 17 years old, and he still did more in life than like,
Mm.
I shouldn't even share this story, but he's dead, so I'm gonna.
What can you say?
What's he gonna do? I, actually, what's she gonna do? I walked up to his girlfriend at his funeral, and the first thing I did is I gave her a big hug, and I was like, "Thank you so much for not making my brother die a virgin. I was like, that would have really messed with me. I'm like, yeah, he died. He didn't even get to get laid one time. But at least I got I remember. I still get to remember the call. Like when he got to tell me about it, he's like, it finally happened.
How did she respond to that?
I feel like I would love that in that moment.
No. She got so red. She didn't say anything. And then she like paused for a minute and she's like, he promised he wouldn't tell you. It wasn't long. It was only a couple months before he died.
Oh, wow.
And then I'm like, and then you go through all the irrational like thoughts. You're like, oh man, he should have gotten her pregnant right before he died. They could have taken care of it. And every woman that my brother or I have dated have had to accept the fact that if they deliver a son, either one of us, the firstborn son, has to be named Michael, and like whoever comes first, whatever. But like, no, I mean that kind of stuff makes me laugh, and is like made me laugh at the time, and it makes me laugh now, right? But like, he did it all too. I mean, he traveled, he flew overseas, he got to do his thing. So like, what are you really angry about at the end of the day, right? Like, you could be a lot more angry at a life not lived than one cut short, I mean, there's certain things, obviously, like he didn't get to start a family or get married or graduate high school, like, but it is what it is, right? At the end of the day, and like, that's life. Like it's something that every person will deal with. They just don't know when.
Correct.
Well, like, do you think it would be any better if you and your wife lived a 50-year marriage and were in love for 50 years and then she dies and leaves you there and you're 85 and you have to realize that now, like, it's hard to realize, but at least you can go fall in love again and live out a life and like find this happiness. Like imagine, and I'm saying that from the standpoint of the grass is always greener, right? If your partner dies later in life, like for a lot of people, they're going to have to realize that that's it. As long as they're alive for the rest of their life, they're fucking alone.
So I want to make sure we're respectful of your time. I appreciate you coming on and sharing and being so open about it. Is there any last thing that you would want to say? Like, I think, I'm really appreciative and grateful for the honesty, because I think people don't talk enough about that anger, that hurt, the negativity, so I really appreciate that. But is there any one last thing that you would want people to know who have kind of maybe in your shoes or in the shoes of the audience?
I would say the big thing for me is that, like, it's gonna be okay. Because it's just gonna, or it's not. And like, that's like a personal choice, like, is it gonna be okay or is it not gonna be okay? Because it's not gonna change. Like time moves one direction. So it's like, and a lot of people will say like, oh, you need to do it and like honor their memory or like or live through their memory. Fuck that. It's all going to be okay or it's not. And like, that's a personal choice, right? Like you have the personal choice that after the trauma happens, after the hurt happens, to wake up every day and not feel sorry for yourself. Like, because it's not unique. It's just when. Everybody deals with it. It's just when. So waking up and like feeling sorry for yourself and like moping through life and like not saying that anyone's going to have it perfected, because we don't. Like the anxiety is still there, the depression is still there, the anger is still there, the sadness is still there.
That's right.
Like, are you going to like, put your shoes on and go to work every day or like whatever the hell you're doing, right? Like, or not. There's certain things that like subconsciously you don't have a choice, like, right? Like subconsciously you're going to breathe. where like you're gonna eat or you need to drink water, or like certain things that but like you kind of just got to treat it like that. Like I just have to keep going. Like, cause what's going to change? Nothing. Like what is sitting around going to do? What's really like, what's being upset going to do? Nothing. Nothing you do is going to change what happened. You just have to like keep going.
Accept and move forward.
Yeah. Well, acceptance is hard to get to, but
Acceptance is hard to get to, but you don't like the hard thing is to realize. And like, I think that this was the big thing that maybe it just hit me one day. It's like, I don't have a choice.
yeah.
Like, I don't have a choice. That's it. It's going to be okay because it has to be okay.
When did you come to that realization? Roughly.
I don't know. Maybe a year ago.
Okay, so it's recent.
Yeah. I mean,
It takes time.
It takes time for sure.
Yeah.
And like, it's going to be like, that's like really, it's going to be okay because it has to be okay. And like, okay is all relevant too, right? Like, it doesn't have to be perfect, you know? No, I mean, I appreciate the conversation because I don't even talk about this stuff very often because you don't often enter a room where like, I mean, it's a pretty uncomfortable topic.
Yeah.
It is.
Like I'd rather walk into like me being the person that I am. I'd rather walk into a, born again Christian church and talk about abortion.
Oh my God.
So you're okay with conflict is what you're saying.
No, yeah, but it is and you just, you never want to talk about if someone has never dealt with loss or anything.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the worst conversation because they just have all the wrong things to say.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all like the superficial shit.
Like, even if they said it perfectly, you're like, fuck you. You don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always used to get mad when people would say, I'm sorry after they found out my mom died. I'd be like, it's not your fault. You didn't kill her, did you?
Right.
Well, and it's all like, I remember arguments. Like I have a best friend, Ashley, who, was on the team that my brother won the gold with. And, I remember even with her thinking at times in our careers, not related to loss or anything else, like just jealousy. I'd be like, dang, like, man, she just gets it all, right? And she was so talented that she was, moved through the ranks and everything was paid for and this, that, and the other. And like, I was coming from a situation where I was, forced to work and I was paying for a lot of things. A lot of it was a struggle. Not all of it was like, sunshine and daisies. And then I go and like post GoFundMe's on Facebook and always doing that. It felt so degrading, right? And I was like, and then when my brother died, even she was still my best friend and she would complain about things. And I remember like thinking to myself, like, this chick has never really dealt with anything, right? Anything. I'm like, it's all sunshine and daisies in this girl's life. She doesn't understand what I'm going through. I was just so angry. And then, a couple months ago, her father passed away and now she does know. And like, he passed away of cancer and now she does know that pain. And that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's not a unique thing. It's just a when.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, everybody's going to get it. It's like, it's just going to happen. It's just a when. The grass is always greener. Right. And I'm fairly certain that losing a child is the worst. My parents, they love each other, right? They've been married a long time. I definitely wouldn't question either of them that if they had to choose if my mother or father died or Mikey got
right.
like only because if they didn't, if either one of them didn't choose Mikey, the wrath of living with that person or having that person still alive. Like say my dad doesn't choose my mom's gonna kill my dad. It's so this whole scenario is over with. But I'm relatively convinced that losing a child is the worst. Watching my parents, like, I didn't want to have kids after my brother died for the longest.
Yeah.
Have you changed your stance on that?
Oh yeah. Now I'm actively searching for a willing participant.
Oh goodness.
How did you make that shift from the fear of having kids to being ready?
Because I just told him, I was like, am I going to really deprive myself of this? You know, am I really going to like cut myself off to that part of my life just because I'm scared?
Right.
I had the fear of not wanting to have kids it's a fear, but it was out of the
reverse. You don't want to leave them.
Yeah, it was out of like, I'm scared that I will die and leave them without a mom.
Get them a sweet life insurance
policy. Yeah, and now my boyfriend really wants kids, so I'm like, okay, I guess we can get on board to that. But like, I can't die and you can't die, so. But like you said though, like you never know. We all will die at some point. I hope to God we don't die before, you know, I don't know. I think I'd probably like to die by like 90, but 90 after 90, you know, I don't know.
I feel like at the end of the day, that's all you can really ask for. Just make it fast, right?
Yeah.
It's the slow ones. Those ones seem like the rough ones.
It's not fun. Yeah, it's not fun.
But like we said, the grass is always greener, right? Like the slow one.
There's downsides to everything.
The slow one seems rough, but you get to say goodbye.
Yeah.
Like the last thing I said to my brother was "fuck the Houston Astros."
Yeah.
You know, I'll talk to you tomorrow, buddy. I'll let you know.
That's right.
Let you know how training went.
Yeah. It's all shitty. But I like it's not unique, it's when.
And it's going to be okay because there's like, unless you want to make it not okay, you know, and I don't see the purpose in that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, and can you imagine if everybody who dealt with loss and trauma just let their world implode? We'd be walking around like everyone would have, you know, mental health issues and everything else stems from it. You got to just move on. I mean, and that sounds really shitty to say. And people are like, I can't move on. And it's like, well, you have to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You have to.
Lightning round. Ash, you can go first.
Okay. All right. Well, now because we talked about the fact that you want to have kids and you're actively searching, how many kids would you like to have?
2 or 3?
2. 3 is fucking insane. Just saying. Are reindeers real creatures?
They are. I've ate them.
Me too. Actually, they're really good. Ask permission or beg for forgiveness?
Definitely beg for forgiveness. Absolutely. Asking permission never got anyone anywhere.
Agree.
How many hours of sleep do you need?
4 or 5.
Oh, damn.
I run my own company, brother. I don't sleep for shit.
What's your favorite sports team?
The Buffalo Bills.
Hell yeah.
Oh.
Go Bills.
I'm surrounded by a Bills fan. Not that it matters. I don't watch football anymore. Climb a mountain or jump from a plane?
I'm fine with either one.
Which one, if you had to choose?
Is it like which one I'd rather do?
Yeah.
Jump out of a plane is way less work.
If Kim Kardashian and Donald Trump were both drowning and you could only save one, who would you save?
I would save Kim.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like I'd have to agree, and I fucking hate Kim Kardashian.
I mean, I was invited to the Trump White House and I didn't shake his hand, so.
Good for you.
Okay, last one, and then we will let you go. Who inspires you?
I would say probably the person that I want to be 10 years from now.
I love that answer.
Well, thank you for coming on, and thank you for the time. We're really appreciative of it.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Day After. You can find this podcast and more at our website at www.thedayafter.com. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you take a moment to leave us a review wherever you listen to your podcast.